A few weeks ago, whispers started swirling online that Floyd Mayweather, once hailed as an untouchable financial giant, might be struggling behind the scenes. The man who called himself Money seemed untouchable as he flashed high-end cars, diamond watches, and private jets. Yet critics began to speculate that his funds were running thinner than he let on. At first, it sounded absurd. Floyd was the undefeated champion who had grossed nearly $1 billion over the course of his boxing career. Could someone at that level really be running short on cash? That rumor alone was enough to grab headlines, but it was his response that made people lean in closer. Instead of staying silent, he showed absolute confidence. He laughed off the doubters and insisted there was nothing to worry about, telling the world that he'd never stop making money no matter how many times people tried to bring him down. It was classic Mayweather style, loud, defiant, and certain. He wasn't just responding to anonymous internet chatter either. Stephen A. Smith, a huge presence in sports commentary, had publicly hinted that maybe Mayweather was taking fights he had no business taking. Smith implied that Floyd could be seeking extra paychecks to sustain his notorious spending habits. Floyd reacted calmly at first, appearing amused by the chatter. He made it clear he doesn't live for outside approval and that, if the world insists on judging him, he'd rather be judged doing exactly what he wants. This approach, the notion that people are going to criticize you either way, revealed just how unbothered Floyd truly was by attempts to question his income. But the more people talked, the more he elaborated, reminding everyone that he'd dedicated his entire life to boxing and built a foundation for future generations in his family. He's no stranger to critiques and controversies. After all, he grew up under the spotlight and thrived in it. His message has always been consistent: let people gossip while he goes about his business. From the outside, the business in question has always looked downright extravagant. It starts with what he shows on social media: stacks of cash spread across hotel beds, brand new high-end cars, wads of bills stuffed in designer bags. Sometimes it's property deals, jets, or entire apartment buildings that he says he now fully owns. He made sure to mention he recently acquired 62 buildings in New York City alone, all purchased without any partners. That was his response to doubters who claimed he was only about flashy gimmicks. In his view, these acquisitions prove there's more going on behind the scenes than partying and spending. For someone who built his nickname around money, he's adamant that the flaunting is about inspiration rather than arrogance. He wants kids who come from nothing, like he once did, to believe they can achieve the same level of success if they work hard. At least, that's the official stance he takes on camera. Yet, not everyone buys that explanation. Stephen A. Smith has been the most public voice challenging Mayweather's choices. While Smith openly acknowledges Floyd's brilliance in the ring, calling him potentially the greatest defensive boxer ever, he can't hide his disappointment in Mayweather's more recent pursuits. For him, the biggest eye-opener was Floyd stepping into the ring against Logan Paul, a social media star-turned-boxer with minimal fighting background. It felt to Smith like a cheap shot at easy money. What did Mayweather have to prove by taking on Logan Paul, unless the idea was purely to capitalize on the spectacle and the boatloads of cash that come with it? Smith argues that exhibition matches against novices damage Mayweather's legacy. Here's a man who once demanded top dollar for legitimate bouts against some of the best fighters in the world, whittling down that skill set and reputation for a quick payday. The worry is that this pattern waters down the sport's integrity. If a legendary champion is fighting random internet celebrities just for fun, what message does that send to fans who yearn for real competition? Mayweather, for his part, shrugs off these criticisms. He points to the fact that, for many years, his entire life revolved around the grind of boxing. He lived in the gym, constantly training, sacrificing free time to remain on top. So, if he now sees an opportunity to maintain financial gains through matches that might look offbeat, he says more power to him. After all, it was the pure devotion he had to the sport that earned him the right to do whatever he wants. That is, of course, unless you share Stephen A.'s opinion that, once you hit that realm of boxing greatness, you owe the world a certain level of seriousness in your matchups. Floyd has never been shy about the fact that money trumps everything for him. Interviews from years back reveal that, for Mayweather, any match has to be financially beneficial first and foremost. Prestige and legacy often come in second. He's even admitted, without hesitation, that his primary concern was never how he'd be remembered by historians, but how large his bank account could get. He frames it in terms of supporting his children, parents, and extended family, wanting to turn them all into millionaires. But to Stephen A., the image the younger generation sees is that money matters more than perfecting your craft. Of course, Mayweather's brand was never only about what happened in the ring. The Money Mayweather persona dominated social media, fueling countless debates about whether it encouraged a harmful, get-rich-quick attitude among up-and-coming fighters. Some see Floyd as an inspiration, a symbol that with total dedication and discipline, one can legitimately become unstoppable, both athletically and financially. But others worry that new athletes will skip the discipline part and go straight for the showy paydays. Stephen A. Smith, in multiple segments on national television, has underscored that the biggest issue isn't just that Floyd is making money. It's that he's overshadowing the purity of the sport, turning it into a circus. Mayweather fans, meanwhile, argue that he's earned the right to do as he pleases. There's nothing left to prove once you've gone undefeated for your entire professional career. Floyd's counters to all these concerns are grounded in how he grew up and what boxing did for him. He describes himself as a kid from nothing who used the ring to secure a future for his entire family line. According to him, everything you see on social media, the fancy cars, the luxurious homes, the million-dollar jewelry pieces, is actually meant to motivate others to imagine bigger. Even so, it's tough for critics to ignore how frequently he flaunts that wealth. They question if it really does serve as motivation, or if it's just more bragging. Then again, he puts his money where his mouth is when it comes to real estate. 62 apartment buildings in a major city is no small accomplishment. Yet the more he posted about it, the more it fueled speculation. Where is all this money coming from, especially if he's turning to exhibitions that don't pay nearly as well as his prime boxing matches? Floyd tries to clear this up by saying he's got no partners in those ventures, implying all profits go directly to him. But once rumors of a dwindling fortune surfaced, the entire Money Mayweather narrative was called into question. If you build your identity around unstoppable wealth, any rumor about financial trouble can quickly overshadow everything else you've done. One of the biggest concerns that Stephen A. has voiced repeatedly is the possibility that younger fighters will see Mayweather's approach as the pinnacle of success. Instead of trying to develop as boxers, they might chase spectacle fights or bizarre matchups that don't necessarily challenge their skill set but do pad their bank accounts quickly. Stephen A. might be old-fashioned in that sense, remembering the glory days of boxing when you tried to surpass the legacy of established greats by beating fierce competition. If money-making fights come at the cost of genuine rivalries, then, in his eyes, the sport is losing an essential spark. Floyd's response is simply that times change. The boxing world has become more of an entertainment business, and he chooses to adapt. For fans, it's a complicated situation. On the one hand, many grew up idolizing Floyd for his defensive genius, counting how many top-tier fighters he outclassed. On the other hand, seeing him in novelty matchups is a letdown because it feels more like an Instagram stunt than a real test of skill. No one can deny that Mayweather has commanded an empire built on his persona. The fleet of 100-plus luxury cars is just the tip of an iceberg made up of private jets, customized mansions, exclusive watch collections, and undisclosed investments. Stephen A., who has visited Mayweather's properties in the past, sometimes can't hide his astonishment at the magnitude of Floyd's riches. But he also knows all too well that money flows in and out, especially when the spending is so grand. Mayweather's brand thrives on big statements, showing off multi-million-dollar garages, dropping millions at the snap of a finger, traveling with duffel bags of cash. Fans eat it up because it's an ongoing reality show. The question remains, is there a real plan behind the scenes, or is it all about the immediate spectacle? Floyd claims the plan is more sophisticated than people assume. He mentions strategic partnerships, brand deals, real estate ownership, and other passive income streams that keep money rolling in monthly. He's often said that, while many think he just shows off, he's also building generational wealth so his grandchildren never have to struggle. Whether that plan holds up depends on how well he manages it all. Many star athletes in the past have flaunted wealth in their prime, only to lose it later. Mayweather says that won't be him. He references the discipline he showed in the ring, insisting he still applies that same focus to business. Yet, every time he schedules an exhibition or teases another flashy event, the world questions if it's more about short-term thrills and less about stable, lasting legacy. Stephen A.'s frustration probably stems from how much he admires Mayweather's ability. He's publicly said that Floyd is one of the best boxers to ever grace the sport, so seeing him reduce himself to showy events can feel like a betrayal of all that boxing once stood for. From Stephen A.'s vantage point, Mayweather's now overshadowing his own monumental achievements with side acts that don't challenge him. Some fans, of course, see it differently. This is the ultimate boss move, where you can pick and choose your events, have minimal risk of losing, and still collect fat checks. In that sense, it's the next evolution of being an icon who refuses to exit the spotlight just because he hung up his professional gloves. All this talk about Mayweather's lifestyle leads to an important question. Does he worry at all about how future generations will view him? When asked directly if he cares more about money or his legacy, he's blunt in saying that money mattered most. His rationale is that legacy doesn't feed your children or your parents. Legacy doesn't buy you freedom to do what you want. So if he has to choose, he's going to pick the route that keeps his family comfortable. That attitude has been a sticking point for many who grew up idolizing boxers that risked everything for glory. Floyd's stance is that he's risked enough by entering the ring in the first place. Once you've proven yourself, you have the right to move on from the punishing aspects of the sport and enjoy the fruits of your labor. Still, that doesn't sit well with people who believe in what boxing used to represent: grit, heart, and an unquenchable thirst to prove you're the best in the world against top competition. Stephen A. Smith sometimes jokes that if there were an all-time record for bragging, Floyd would have that belt too. He's not entirely wrong. Mayweather's entire persona revolves around letting people know he has more money, more success, and more business savvy than just about anyone else. It's part of why he fights to keep the spotlight on him. Even in retirement, he's determined to remain relevant, whether it's with exhibitions, promotional events, or outlandish displays of cash on social media. For Stephen A., it's not just that Floyd is bragging. It's that he might be overshadowing the deeper principles of sportsmanship that once anchored his career. But Floyd counters that times have changed. Athletes are brands, and fans often crave the drama of seeing the rich and famous doing extraordinary things. If that's what Floyd's delivering, it's just a sign that he knows his audience. Mayweather's critics frequently reference how others from his generation, like Manny Pacquiao, approached the latter stages of their careers. Pacquiao returned to fight top contenders. He didn't fill his schedule with exhibitions or out-of-the-box matchups against inexperienced fighters. For many in the boxing world, that's the route of a traditional champion, prolonging the real competition as long as your body allows. Floyd's perspective is different. He believes that because he retired undefeated, nothing else needs to be proven competitively. Everything now is about maintaining the brand he built. He hints that if people are willing to buy tickets or pay-per-view fees for these novelty matches, why not give them what they want? Then there's the complicated issue of Floyd's ego. Tank Davis, one of Mayweather's former protégés, once commented that Floyd struggles to let any fighter under his wing become bigger or more successful than him. Davis claims Mayweather tries to keep his fighters in check, ensuring they never surpass his star power or earn as much as he did. Whether that's true or not, it illustrates how Mayweather's brand of leadership can be viewed as a double-edged sword. He has tremendous knowledge to share, but if he's stifling others' growth to remain top dog, that's not necessarily healthy for the sport. It could be that Floyd's entire self-image is tied to being the ultimate draw, the biggest name, the unstoppable force. Letting someone else claim that throne might challenge the identity he's cultivated all these years. It's not uncommon for star athletes to struggle when the spotlight dims, and with someone like Floyd, that internal turmoil might be amplified. For him, stepping back gracefully might feel like losing, something he never learned to do in the ring. In another telling moment, Oscar de la Hoya once cautioned Mayweather about the dangers of extravagant spending. He pointed out that many fighters and professional athletes burn through their fortunes fast, particularly if they get used to an ever-rising standard of luxury. Floyd seemed to disregard that caution, continuing to wave around piles of cash as though it was an inexhaustible resource. But the rumors about him needing money from exhibitions to sustain his lifestyle weren't just random. They came from the fact that some watchers claimed to see signs of financial strain. For instance, there were stories about tax disputes or delayed payments. Maybe none of it was as dire as rumored, but it's enough for the public to assume cracks might appear in that seemingly impenetrable fortune. Floyd dismisses all such concerns with the argument that people have always tried to tear him down, and he's still standing taller than ever. Yet, the seeds of doubt remain. Perhaps the biggest sticking point is how dramatically Mayweather's approach shifted from the days he was purely in pursuit of undisputed greatness. Once upon a time, he was obsessed with surpassing all other fighters, not just in skill but in earnings. He often argued with commentators who said that Oscar de la Hoya was a bigger draw. Mayweather's response was always that no one else sells like he does. He ended up beating De La Hoya in the ring, then surpassing him in revenue. That kind of competitive streak didn't vanish, it morphed into an obsession with holding onto the money throne. So when Stephen A. Smith or anyone else sees him battling novices, it's hard not to suspect that it's more about the paycheck than anything else. Floyd, for his part, says it's always been about the paycheck, so there's no betrayal here, just honesty. And he's not entirely wrong that, if people are willing to pay for the show, he'll provide it. The younger fighters do watch all this, and some try to copy his model without the foundation of Mayweather's skill or business acumen. That's part of why Stephen A. Smith keeps calling out Floyd's example. Mayweather got to this point because he was supremely disciplined and undefeated against legitimate challengers. Now that he's essentially showcasing money to an entire generation, they might miss the first step, actually becoming a master of the craft. In the end, Mayweather's influence is massive, for better or worse. Plenty of fighters claim they want to fight just like him, live just like him, and spend just like him. Whether that leads them down a destructive path or not depends on whether they grasp the entire journey Floyd took, not just the final showy destination. Behind all the diamond-encrusted watches and custom luxury cars, Mayweather says he quietly does good deeds too, like participating in charity basketball games the day after a big fight or helping out families in need. This side of him doesn't always make it to social media, overshadowed by flamboyant displays of wealth. It's a bit ironic that for someone so private about his behind-the-scenes generosity, he's extremely public about the glitzy side of life. But he defends that by saying people aren't inspired by modesty. They want to see proof that a huge transformation is possible if they work for it. And he's well aware that flashy content generates more attention in an era dominated by clicks and views. The tension between living humbly and fueling curiosity about his lavish lifestyle is part of the Mayweather brand. He's an enigma, simultaneously praising discipline and showing off million-dollar purchases in the same breath. That public persona came into question again when folks discovered how rattled Floyd once was by the idea that Oscar De La Hoya might be a bigger pay-per-view draw. In that memorable interview, he got visibly angry whenever the anchor suggested another fighter had out-earned him. It was a glimpse of the jealousy that drove him to push his brand further. If someone else was considered the cash cow, he took that personally and made it his mission to prove them wrong. That mindset fueled him to build a bigger empire. And it worked. For a long time, he was the highest-paid athlete in the world. But as soon as there was a suggestion that he might no longer hold that title, or that he needed easy-fix matches to keep the money flowing, the insecurities seemed to flare up. Floyd always tries to keep a cool exterior, but there's an undercurrent of anger whenever anyone questions his finances. Tank Davis's words bring up a whole different dimension. The idea that Mayweather might hinder the careers of those he mentors so they don't become bigger stars than him. If that's even partially true, it points to a significant ego that transcends normal competitor pride. Floyd's always had a complicated relationship with mentorship. On the one hand, he was guided by his father and uncle as he entered the sport, learning from them and sometimes clashing with them in a way that only family can. On the other hand, once he became the face of boxing, it was almost like he wanted to remain the only face of boxing. That's tough for any up-and-comer who admires him, because they might be in for a rude awakening if they get too big or too good. Ultimately, that approach might keep Mayweather's star shining, but it risks isolating him. People won't trust that he has their best interests at heart if they suspect he's only doing enough to keep them in his shadow. The lavish spending and continuous flaunting also brought criticism from people like Oscar De La Hoya, who warned that big money doesn't always last forever. At first, Mayweather seemed immune to that logic, continuing to pile up cars, buying out entire sections of watch stores, living in a state of constant extravagance. Over time, the rumor mill started churning that maybe the well was drying up. Floyd's official stance is that he's not just living off leftover fight checks, he's investing. He claims to own multiple real estate properties and other ventures that keep his wealth stable. The truth may be somewhere in the middle. Even if he's far from broke, there could be an urgency behind the scenes to maintain the cash flow necessary for his lavish tastes. That urgency might push him into more exhibitions or other forms of entertainment that guarantee quick payouts. To him, it's a rational business move. To critics, it's borderline tragic that a living legend is resorting to gimmicks. As the debate rages on, Mayweather's fans hold firm that he's just enjoying retirement the best way he knows how. They argue that if you've already cemented your place in history, you have a right to profit off your name however you choose. Stephen A. Smith and others argue that it muddies the waters of boxing, turning it into a carnival instead of the sweet science it once was. The truth is both viewpoints carry some weight, and what side you land on may depend on how you believe a champion should behave after achieving greatness. Money might be the reason Floyd started this new chapter of his life, but the need to remain in the limelight is equally strong. He's never been just a boxer. He's been a character, a businessman, a master promoter. It's part of why, even years after his official retirement, his name keeps popping up in headlines. Each time he steps into the ring, no matter who's on the other side, it sparks conversation. At this stage, conversation equals revenue, because fans or haters will tune in to see if maybe, just maybe, he slips up. That constant attention means brand deals, sponsor interest, and merchandising opportunities. Whether Stephen A. Smith finds it honorable or not, it's undeniably profitable. The final piece of Mayweather's puzzle might be the legacy he says he doesn't care about. For better or worse, when people look back at his career, they'll see two halves. The first half is a brilliant boxer who clawed his way to undefeated status, taking down world-class opponents and earning every cent. The second half is a man who recognized the power of spectacle and dedicated himself to wringing every drop of profit out of his brand. Some will say it's the ultimate hustle, others will argue it tarnishes the pure competition aspect of boxing. But in Floyd's world, it's about who's laughing all the way to the bank. In the end, Mayweather insists he's built something that will outlast him, a family secure for generations. He points to his father's success, his mother's comfort, and the continued expansion of his business ventures. If that's true, maybe he's right that he won the game he intended to play all along. But if the next wave of boxers skip the hard work and just try to replicate the cash-first approach, the sport might suffer. That tension isn't going away anytime soon. The critics will keep condemning Floyd's methods as a betrayal of boxing. Floyd will keep brushing them off while counting his earnings. Stephen A. Smith will keep raising concerns on TV, reminding viewers that a fighter's real value should be in the ring, testing himself against formidable opponents, not turning the sport into a spectacle. And Floyd, true to form, will likely keep telling everyone that if they're going to judge him anyway, he'll do what he wants. It's a tug-of-war with no simple resolution. Ultimately, it comes down to personal perspective. Does seeing Mayweather decked out in diamond watches, multiple million-dollar cars, and enormous wads of cash inspire you, or does it make you question the integrity behind it? Maybe there's a bit of both at play. You can admire the hustle while remaining uneasy about the ramifications for boxing as a sport. One thing's for sure, Floyd has harnessed controversy like few others. Every criticism thrown his way becomes another reason for him to defend his empire, drawing eyes and ears. He's a performer through and through, so the more debates swirl around his finances and motivations, the more he benefits from the publicity. That cycle might be the real genius behind his career, ensuring that even if someday the money runs short, the legend of Money Mayweather keeps generating attention. As you let it all sink in, consider that Floyd Mayweather's entire journey shows two sides of a coin: a formidable athlete who climbed from humble roots to become an unrivaled champion, and a relentless businessman who refuses to exit the stage quietly. Whether he's truly under financial strain or not, he successfully kept people talking, and that itself seems to be his ultimate victory. Some call it shameless self-promotion, others admire the marketing mastery. Whichever way you lean, it's hard not to watch. That's precisely what Mayweather counts on, the curiosity factor that keeps fans and skeptics alike glued to his every move. The real question might be whether the next generation of boxers will be able to separate the grit and talent that built Mayweather from the headlines that followed. Will they learn discipline, or will they be tempted by quick, flashy events? Stephen A. Smith's frustration is that a decade from now, we might have more social media brawlers than hungry fighters, all chasing a fraction of Floyd's success. And if that happens, was it truly worth it for Mayweather to shift the sport's direction? Perhaps only time will tell. In the meantime, we watch, we talk, and we speculate, just the way Floyd Mayweather wants it. And that might be the greatest irony of all. Whether you approve of his methods or not, you're still tuning in, still intrigued, still waiting to see what he does next. So the question remains, did Floyd Mayweather break the sport he once commanded, or did he elevate it to a new stage of global entertainment? And is his brand of wealth-building a cautionary tale in disguise, or the ultimate success story for those determined to climb from nothing to the top? The answers aren't straightforward, and maybe that's what keeps Mayweather on everyone's lips. He's not just a retired boxer, he's an ongoing conversation. Even if you hate the way he parades his wealth, you can't deny the fascination he sparks. Perhaps that's the real legacy he leaves behind, a blueprint for staying relevant long after your time in the ring is done, for better or worse. And if you ever doubt him, well, he'd just remind you that he's the one collecting the checks while critics try to analyze his every move. Maybe that's the perfect ending for a champion who spent his entire career mastering not only his craft, but the art of making people watch him do it.